Welcome back to Bible Basics. I'm George Willett with the Westport Christian Church. We are here just talking about faith and the Bible, God, and culture. And last week I did what I thought was going to be a one-off, just sharing some interesting research that I had come across and a book that I had bought. And I thought we'd just spend 1 week on it, maybe two, but surprisingly, we've got a lot of feedback. A number of you have asked questions, have been wanting to know a little bit more about this. So we're going to do a few weeks on this book. It is on the Worldview of American Adults. It is a book that you can buy. It's by George Barna. It's on Amazon. You can go find it online or at a bookstore, I'm sure. And again, this was research that they've conducted at Arizona Christian University at the Center for Cultural Research for the last couple of years on how do Americans actually not just perceive what they think, but how they act. And so this will be part two. And first and foremost, again, let's talk real quick. What's a worldview? I gave a couple of longer definitions last week that I had found and kind of worked with. And today we'll just try to keep it easy. A worldview is how you perceive the things you see and experience. It's how you interpret and respond to the world around you. So you're living life and things happen and you've got to make decisions. And your worldview is that frame of reference. It's those filters that as things come in, you figure out what life is and how things should be. So a worldview is how you decide some really important things. Your worldview tells you what's right and wrong, what's good and bad. Your worldview tells you what's important in life. Our worldview answers those big questions. Well, why does anything exist? Why are we here? What's our purpose in life? It lets you know what is the good life? What should I be aiming for? What am I striving my goals to achieve? Our worldview lets us know what true happiness is. And we'll also answer that really important question, what happens when we die? Now the truth is, everyone has a worldview, but they're not the same. And so we've got to figure out what worldview matches up the most with the reality around us, and then try to live truthfully. This is the results from the survey that Barna did with the center. And it was pretty surprising to a lot of people. Here at the Port, we kind of keep our eye out for this research, and we've studied a bunch of this. And so it's not amazingly surprising to us, but it is disheartening a little bit to get more verification that these were some of the worldviews they were checking out. Secular humanism, moralistic therapeutic deism, which is again kind of a fake Christianity. Postmodernism, nihilism, Eastern mysticism, Marxism, and biblical worldview, and all of those together only made up about 12% of the population of American adults. And that looks pretty good because the clear winner there, the one that most people had in that small grouping, was a biblical worldview. The problem is the rest of them wind up being, again, what's called syncretism, this idea of you're just taking a bunch of different beliefs from different worldviews and you mush them all together for what feels right to you. And we'll get more into this later as we go on, because again, we're going to do this for a little bit longer than I thought. Some important things to know that came out of this research, but also things we know from human development, child development, is that a person's worldview begins developing between the ages of 13 to 15, 18 months. When babies start experiencing object permanence, when they start realizing that they're not the only person in the universe, that the universe doesn't revolve around them, that kind of happens young. They start realizing, oh, mom is separate from me, dad is separate from me, and that things will continue to exist when they're not around them. That's the very beginning of developing a worldview, and how we care for and love children will set them up later in life for how they view the world. But through research, what they find is that a person's worldview is mostly developed. You're kind of hardwired by the age of 13. You kind of like, okay, here's the world, here's what I've learned from culture, from my family, from just living life. And then the late teens into your 20s, you're testing all that stuff out. You're trying to figure out, okay, does this hold true? Is this something I can maybe mix and match this and that? And some things can change, but that foundation has been pretty much set. And we all see this with the teenagers that we know. Those teen, early 20 years are those years where they're trying new things, they're testing out new things, they're individuating, they're becoming separate people away from their families. And so they may end up looking very much different than their families for that period of time. But oftentimes it's amazing, later on in life, they kind of come back to what they were absorbing when they were little, what they kind of learned in their family. What we know is that in America, worldview is caught, not taught. Through friends, family, school, internet, movies, TV, music, entertainment, all of this stuff, people just kind of learn about the world. And we don't tend to intentionally teach. And I wanted us to see tonight where that goes against what God has told us as Christians to do in the Bible. All the way back in Deuteronomy, God says, listen, people of Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is the only God. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Always remember these commands that I give you today. Be sure to teach them to your children. Talk about these commands when you sit in your house and when you walk on the road. Talk about them when you lie down and when you get up. When I look around and see how few people have what's defined as a biblical worldview, I've got to admit that we as Christians have failed. We have failed generation after generation after generation of children, thinking that if we just attend church on a Sunday, if we just talk about God occasionally, if we'll say prayers before our meals, that will teach children everything they need to know. That if we give them general moral instruction, be nice, share your things, don't hurt people, that will lead people into this relationship with Christ and this biblical worldview they're going to live their lives by. I think the last 50, 60 years have shown us that it absolutely, positively will not happen. And I'll be honest with you, it's not just that it's accelerated here in the last 60 years. I mean, this has been a problem that we have been facing since the beginning of our faith. People learning to actually have a biblical worldview. It's what the apostles were teaching, is what they continually warn people about. It's what the writers of the New Testament would talk about, and we'll talk about that later. But if you're a believer, and if you're looking at this research and you're concerned, then understand that we must take seriously the need to train people in a biblical worldview. And as a youth minister, as someone who works with kids, youth, and families, I have a role to play, and I can be helpful. I can be an instrument that God uses to help families. But the truth is this: children will learn from their parents. It's why here at the Port we've transitioned to a family model worship. Like, our kids stay with us the whole time we're here worshiping. We don't send them away for kids' church or junior church or whatever you want to call it. And the reason why, if other churches do that, that's up to them, that's fine. But we've realized children at the youngest age have got to be in worship with their families. They've got to be watching and seeing what it looks like to be a disciple of Christ, to be a Christian, to be a follower. They need to see them studying. They need to see them praying. They need to see them worshiping and praising and all of it. And when kids participate in that worldview that we want to give them, this biblical worldview, is going to be stickier. But it's not just the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Paul in Ephesians is writing to parents, and he says, fathers, don't make your children angry, but raise them with the kind of teaching and training you learn from the Lord. I know when I first came to Christ, I was an adult. I had children in the home. ranging from very young, around 5 or 6, all the way up to teenagers. I didn't know my own faith. So as I was learning, I thought sending them to church and sending them to youth group was where they were going to be trained and equipped. I didn't realize until I became older, I had grown in my faith and even came into ministry, was that the foundation is the home. That is what God intended when he created Adam and Eve, when he created family. And so now I see it as definitely preparing and equipping youth, but as a church as a whole is encouraging families to live this biblical worldview and then for them to share it with their kids. Because if we want the statistics, the percentages to be different here, we've got to get back to doing biblical things, biblical ways. So this was a quick one. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's getting you thinking about why this is important, why this whole idea of worldview. If the church, if we, individually, me and you, don't take this serious with our kids and our grandkids, we're not going to see much of an increase in the kingdom. We're not going to see a change. There may be, 180 million people in this country saying they're Christians, but there will be much fewer who are living this out daily in their lives. And I'd like to see this country going back to having a biblical worldview. I mean, people may ask, why is this discussion important? If you look at the world we live in, it's becoming very obvious that something's not right. And I'll talk specifically here in America. We have runaway poverty. We have all sorts of conflict and disunity within this country. You have people with varying degrees of understanding and belief about things such as gender and sexuality and crime, race. We have places in this country now where individuals are going into stores and just stealing massive amounts of stuff, armloads. And we're talking teams of people, dozens and dozens of people. The store doesn't do anything, can't do anything to stop them. The police in a lot of these cities are limited in what they're doing or can do. Prosecutors are saying they're not going to prosecute. And people think they have this worldview where it's okay. It's okay to take things that don't belong to you because you need them, or the corporations are greedy, or whatever the excuse is. But it's having an effect on us. We have a worldview where there are people in this country who continue to be racist. They think differently or poorly about people of other races than they are. That's not a biblical value. There are people who are not taking care of their families. We have people who are out there getting drunk and high, and it's destroying their lives, and it seems like no one cares. We have this horrible epidemic of mental illness in this country and way too few resources. And it seems like people are okay with it. We have a government that seems to not care about people. We have a government that seems out of touch. And the worldview seems to be, it's just the way it is and it's okay. So if we return to a biblical worldview where we see the oneness that we can all have together, that we're all made in God's image, that everyone has value, even people I disagree with, even people that hate me have worth because they've been made in God's image. That it is individuals that need to be going out and reaching out to the poor and the hurting and the lost, and in love trying to bring healing and hope into their lives, and ultimately sharing the gospel message of Jesus Christ. When Christianity is done well, when Christianity is done biblically, Christians change the culture they live in for the better. Not screaming and yelling at people, not acting foolish, but setting up hospitals and feeding programs and adopting children that need families, providing care and comfort to the people in need and who are hurting, to stop depending on government and start saying that it's up to the individuals to take care of the people in the family of faith first, and then those even outside of the family. So I hope you understand why this is important, and I hope you continue coming back, because we'll be doing this for a few more weeks until we run out of things to say. God bless.